What I'm going to share with you today is actually very different from everything that you've been hearing so far. It's a different school of entrepreneurship, and I think we should pay a little bit of attention to this school also. I'll introduce you to this school of entrepreneurship, which I think is one of the most vibrant schools, and unfortunately, probably one of the most ignored ones. So let me take you to this school. I'll show you a small video of the businesses which are happening all around us. But unfortunately, very often we don't think of them as businesses, we don't think of them as entrepreneurs. So let me walk you through this. What you just saw in this 30-second clipping is probably one of the biggest business environments in the world. Unfortunately, the organized businesses, the Sensexes, the ASSOCHAMs, the FICCIs, the various other bodies, classify them as marginalized, unorganized, and informal sectors. I want to take you through about 10-15 minutes and show you how much of injustice we do to this entire business world and how much of bevkufi we do in thinking that they are unorganized, informal, or marginalized. Let me take you step by step and show you that in every metric of business, any metric of business you want to apply, they are exponentially better than many of the businesses that are out there in NASDAQ or Sensex or the top blue chips. Let me walk you through each one of those metrics. And I first begin with the pure necessity and what this business delivers to India. 50% of India's GDP comes from the unorganized sector. The unorganized sector provides employment to more than 90% of our workforce. And most importantly, in every metric, they beat the organized, so-called organized sector hands down. And let me show you one metric at a time. We begin with the return of investment per square feet. If you actually calculate any payment business that you see and compare it with the return of investment that comes from these big malls, these shopping complexes and all that, you will realize that at the payment, the return of investment, even after paying the fees to the municipal corporation or whatever, their return of investment is exponentially higher. You must have seen these bookstalls in Bombay whenever you have been going around, and you must have also seen some vendors who transport these books by hand. You would have seen that. Now, many of you who have studied marketing and sales know that in the marketing jargon, fight for shelf space to put your product in especially in the FMCG business, to take shelf space, how much of design and strategy is done and how fiercely that space is fought. I want you to equate that with this old man who has to design his product mix because he's carrying that 3 to 4 kilos of weight from morning till evening. And when you carry 2 or 3 kilos for more than 2 to 3 hours, it doesn't feel like 2 to 3 kilos. So as I was telling Savi here in the afternoon, that when your book reaches this stack, then it's a bestseller. Because it is being testified by the sweat equity of that old man who has to carry it in his hand, and he'll only carry a book which he knows is a bestseller. The second metric is equitable distribution of profits. When you have a plate of idli in a street where you pay 12 rupees or 15 rupees for it, the owner, the vendor, gets to keep only 2 to 3 rupees. The remaining 15 rupees or remaining 12 rupees goes to the entire supply chain. The people who wash the utensils, the people who grind it, the auto rickshaw guy who brings it, all of them get an equitable distribution. But when you have the same plate of idli in a 5-star hotel where you pay 400 rupees for it, bulk of the money is kept by the establishment and only a small percentage of that money is given to the entire supply chain. The third is the degree of empowerment of decision making. This boy sells these roses for 10 rupees. His cost, his kharidi, is 7 rupees, which means 30% profit per rose. And he can give you a 50% discount if he likes your face. To get a 5% discount from a large conglomerate, and there are many large conglomerates here, and you will testify it, sir. To get that 5% discount, that marketing head will have to take the decision all the way to the board, and by the time the decision comes, the opportunity would have been gone. There is more fluidity in the street markets than any one of the businesses that you have seen. You see the street vendor here. Any guesses what he's selling? He's selling for a festival. Which festival is that? Holi. So this person and millions of street vendors like him, he can't sell Holi products throughout the year. He will sell it for about 2 to 3 weeks. Then he has to change to Ganpati. Then he has to change for Christmas. Then he has to change for some other festival. He has to change his entire supply line. He has to change his pitch. He has to change his product mix. He has to change every market segmentation. Each one of those things changes, and it changes more than 15 to 16 times in 1 year. You must have also heard big corporates trying to do change management. Typically, I'm given to understand by management gurus that it takes them anywhere between 5 to 7 years to do a change management from one product line to another product line. There is more entrepreneurship per square feet in the unorganized market. What you're seeing over here, which looks like a big mess. Do you remember when you are traveling in Bombay especially, and I'm sure in Nasik also, suddenly you will see in the streets, in every street corner, a new product will come. It may be a car cleaning pichkari, it may be a head massager, it may be a toy, it will be Christmas hats before Christmas, it will be that the national flag which will come out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, just before 26 Jan. Can you visualize the amount of planning, infrastructure, supply chain, bringing that equipment, the planning of when that particular product will be released, and it will be released simultaneously. Unsold stock has to be taken back, cash flow has to be managed. All of this is, and certain slots are reserved. So before Christmas, you can't launch anything else. Before the 15th August and 26th January, you can't launch anything else. Those slots are fixed for those products. And all of this is happening without SAP, ERP, Microsoft Outlook, regulatory bodies, planning divisions, committees. None of that. And we call them unorganized sector. We call the government organized. We have to understand that how much of disservice we do to this entire industry by not even looking at them from the metrics that they deliver literally on a daily basis. From the time your day starts in the morning, the newspaper coming, flower coming into your house, coconut water, each and every one of those things is being managed seamlessly, and you do not have a single point of failure on a daily basis. Tell me how many of you have missed a newspaper in the morning or missed the flower in the morning, and compare that with tier 1 companies where your call drops, your signal drops. All of this is being done by people who don't have MBAs, haven't been to Harvard, haven't been to none of that places. This market is an equal opportunity market. Let me show you the next slide where I'll demonstrate this to you. Whether you're old, young, illiterate, disabled, transvestite, male, female, that's the place where you get employment. I would challenge people who work in corporates to raise their hands and say, we employ more than 5 transvestites. Anybody sitting over here. All these marginalized people, the only place where they can go to earn a living is the unorganized market. If you want to see the synergy which happens, look at the guy in the middle. In the morning, he sells these snacks in front of Shivaji Park, catering to the joggers and walkers who go. In the evening, he sells the same snacks with a little bit of mixed change in front of liquor shops for a completely different demography. This last man who is standing here, he is from a shop in Fashion Street in Bombay. Some of you may have heard about it. Yeah? Many of you may have seen it also. Do you realize that there are more than 300 shops in Fashion Street who sell exactly the same product at the same price with no competitive differentiation between each other except the relationship he has with that customer who comes to him? And remember one thing, 90% of the customers who come to Fashion Street will come there only once, because most of them are people who are coming from out of town. They will do their shopping and go. So he can't even have the same customer coming again and again. In that 2 minutes time, he has to take out that product which will fit the person. He or she, mostly she, will give it one trial. And in that one trial, if it doesn't fit, she'll move to the next shop. He has to manage that customer in that 180 seconds and deliver the product. Otherwise, he starves. There is more management lessons per square feet in the streets. And I'll tell you a very interesting story which illustrates this beautifully. I mean, there are millions of stories, but this is very close to my heart. And I'll tell you the reason why. So some years ago, I was working with the Mahindra Group, and I had gone to Pragati Maidan in Delhi. Many of you may know Pragati Maidan, where a lot of exhibitions are held. And I was invited to give a talk there very similar to this one. So I had gone there with a friend of mine who was a CEO of another company. That company was called Office Smart India. And since this CEO had come to Delhi, he was using that opportunity to brief his team. And we were standing outside Pragati Maidan. We still had time for our session. So we were standing out there, and he was briefing his team. There were about 8-9 people whom he was talking to, reviewing the performance and all of that. And since it was none of my business, I was standing a little to the side. Suddenly, I noticed a small street kid, a street urchin, a beggar basically, who came up to my friend and stood in front of him and started appealing to him. So my friend was very busy, so he was irritated by this chap. He tried to shoo him away 2-3 times, but the kid didn't go away. He would go back a couple of steps and then again come back. So finally, my friend got so irritated that he started looking in his pocket for some change. And of course, that was a cue for this entire team to find change. They immediately took out change and put out their hands. 3-4 of those, everyone tries to be a Keen Kumar in front of the CEO. Keen Kumaris also. So the CEO picked out one coin from that and gave it to the kid, and that happened to be a 5 rupee coin. In those days, 5 rupee coin was a big deal, and for that kid, it was a very big deal. So he looked at the coin, he put it in his hand, and he ran, and a couple of other kids tried to snatch it away from him, but he prevented them. And then he went to a corner, and I was noticing that in the corner, he was sitting with another kid who was most likely his younger brother. And he told that kid, he edged him and told him, you go to these people and you will get. Now, I want to share 4 management lessons with you here. The first lesson is persistent pace. This kid knew that even if he was shooed away, he had to stand over there until he got the money. The second very important lesson he knew, intuitively he knew, talk to the decision maker. Even if it is not the decision maker who actually gave the money. Money came from someone else, but he knew intuitively to talk to the decision maker. Once he got the deal, he did not talk about it, he did not announce it in the market, he did not say, party chahiye mere ko Goa mein, none of that stuff. He went back to that corner, and what better example of customer relationship management do you want, where he tells his younger brother, there is more money to be taken from them, go back and take it. It takes us in corporates roughly about 3 to 4 years to teach this to management graduate trainees whom we get. Because they will go to some fancy title, vice president photocopier, uske paas chale jayega. That guy will tell him, we don't have a budget right now, come back next year. He'll come back and report, sir, no budget this year, but next year he's called us. The same management lessons which these kids have to learn, and they have to learn it. You know why? Because if they don't learn it, they'll sleep hungry that night. That's the luxury that our education gives us, which they don't have. They have no margin there is no margin that this quarter we have lost some, market share, we'll make it up in the next quarter. It doesn't work in their world. If this day they didn't make a deal, they will go to bed hungry that night.